As you can see here, 3 routers. Okay. Give you the IP addressing. Okay. You do not have to make all of these VMs. This is from references for NAT and ACLs and all kinds of other stuff. All right. So you don't need to have all these VMs running. All right. What I would do for Monday is I would come prepared with GNS3 on your laptop. Have these 3 routers in there. All right. Configured correctly. On R2, you're going to have to install an additional component, an additional fast Ethernet port. All right. You right click, you hit configure, you go to slots, you add it in as a slot. You'll see it there. All right. I would address everything. I don't tell you what kind of routing you're going to use. So I would leave that alone. Just make sure you have everything IP addressed. Yeah, Carrie? This is on Blackboard, sir. This is on Blackboard, so you can download it. Huh? It's under assignments.
Is it?
Yep. Better be. I put it there tonight. All right. I give you a couple of other hints. All right. There's your public network for your DMZ. There's your private network for the DMZ. So, in essence, you can set up NAT, or you can script to set up NAT. I just don't tell you what router it's going to be on, whether it's going to be on R1 or R2, or I highly doubt it's going to be on R3. All right? So I would maybe write that out and be ready to paste it into one of those 2, along with your interface commands for NAT as well. All right? Same. If you look down here, I give you a 10-net, private 10-net. I tell you what your DHCP scope is. You can kind of figure out what's going to be excluded because it's not in here. You can build your DHCP scope. You can do your exclusion. And since this is relatively public, you can take a really good educated guess at where the port address translation is going to be. Okay, now, Pat could be here. Pat could be here, or Pat could be here. You could be on R1, R2, or R3. I would be ready for any contingency. Again, do a couple lines of code, write some script, change some IP addresses the night of the final. That makes sense. All right. So I give you kind of an idea of what's there. I give you kind of an idea of what's there so you can work ahead. You should be able to have this topology ready to go, have these routers turned on, have them addressed, have the configurations in a somewhat decent state. The HTTP scope should be done. I would take an educated guess at where NAT's going to be, or scripted out that you can put it anywhere. Same with PAT. All right. Then all you have to do is the simple stuff. All right. Lock out your aux port, turn off CDP, turn off your HTTP engine, write a couple of access lists here, there, wherever. You remember how to write access lists. All right. All right. So that'll be the excuse me, the hard piece. Okay. Be able to do IP inspect. We covered that earlier. All right, IP inspect. Now, you can use your previous labs, you can use your book, you can use the internet. Okay, you can bring additional books in if you want to. I've had students bring in Cisco command guides. Whatever you want to bring in or surf on the net to look up is fine. No chat rooms, no phone calls. All right, you can't phone a friend. Sorry. All right, this isn't deal or no deal. That's not a deal or no deal, is it?
Who wants to be a
Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? This isn't Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I always think it's weakest link. You are the weakest link. Goodbye. So
So you think that those are going to be VMware? Or?
no, this is GNS3. This is not going to be VMware.
Oh.
This is just for reference. Now, what I suggest you do is you can connect the VM here and do testing. That's perfectly fine. I'm not going to stop you from doing that. You can do whatever VMware you want to, but keep this in mind. That's going to take time away from you. Okay? So if you want to do that and have it all set up and ready to go, that's great. But be careful you don't burn time. You only got 2 hours. Okay? All right. Any questions on that?
And he said the top address was the public and bottom was private, or
If you don't recognize what a public address is and a private address in here, I'm worried. Seriously. What's the private address here? It's the 172, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Everything
yeah.
else here, is all public.
All right. Yeah.
Right? Now, look at how this is. They map to one another. So, more than likely, if I see this, this tells me that the IP address on the actual machines is this, .55.54.52 in the last octet. It tells me that they're going to be mapped or natted to these public IPs. More than likely in R2. More than likely in R2. More than likely in R2. But it can also be done in R1 just as well. Okay? This is why a lot of you guys had so many problems with Lab 2. Lab 2 gives you a lot of options. You can do a lot of things a lot of different ways. And guess what? Still be right. You could have done Lab 2 one way and gotten 100%. He could have done 3 of the questions in Lab 2 completely different and still gotten 100%. Okay? There's some flexibility in there. There may be some flexibility in the exam as well. That's the discretion of the professor. All right, so now what we're going to do is I will take out some notes or recording device or whatever. I'm going to go through question by question in Lab 2. I'm going to see what you guys have question-wise. All right? And I'm going to explain some things. And I'm going to go over stuff. So we're done with that. So first and foremost, I have my VM running. All right. And on my topology, everything's up, connected. I've got all my routers running. All right. So, number 1, IP routers according to the diagram. Voila. Ensure you give them proper host name. Does anybody need help with question 1? Cool. I would hope not. Question 2. Create routing protocol domains according to topology. Ensure that you have full 100% connectivity between all routers and networks. Consider all networks to be routable from R1's Ethernet interface downward. We went over that previously. OSPF, EIGRP, redistribution. Everybody can remember that? Does anybody have any questions on that? I went through that one pretty thoroughly a couple class periods ago. If you have a question, raise your paw. Don't be shy. Yes. Yes, you have to do a default route and you have to distribute that through the OSPF domain. I told you the command that you needed to do for that. Okay, under the OSPF routing process. Okay. For those of you who forgot or weren't here, default dash information space originate. Okay, great. Number 3, block any routing for RFC 1918 networks to the internet. So, to the internet. Let me say that one last time. To the internet. So, I have an RFC 1918 network here. I have an RFC 1918 network here. All right. Now, I think it says not any, but all. If I were doing this, yep, it's going to go on R1. Here's my RFC 1918 addresses. I got to write a standard access list. A standard access list. And apply it on R1. Why do I do it on R1? Why don't I do it on R2 and R3? I do it on one router instead of 2. Alright? Now, could I have done it on R2 and R3? Well, yeah, I could have. And it still could have been right. This would have been double work. So, what I did is on R1, I wrote an IP access list standard and named it RFC 1918 with these 3 deny statements that match up to these CIDR notations. And then the last statement I do is permit any. Why do I do permit any at the end of that ACL? If I don't, it's going to explicitly deny all. So I implicitly allow everything.
Now the next question I have is, where do I apply that bad boy? Well, R1, this is Ethernet 0, this is Ethernet 1. I applied it to Ethernet 01, IP access group RFC 1918N. So as it hits this interface, it drops. That's a better practice because at least it doesn't go through the routing table, it doesn't go through the processor, etc. Now, if you'd applied it to the outbound, the transmit buffer on that Ethernet interface, I'd still give you credit. Not the best thing to do, but it still would work. It still would work. Okay. Next. Re-IP your network from a /25 to a /29. This is a little tricky. So we originally IP'd all this. We set up OSPF and everything else. Well, I'm changing the IP addresses on the interface here within the 201.68.109.128 network from a /25, which is 255.255.255.128 to a /29, which is 255.255.255.248. That's relatively easy. That's just the IP address command on each of those interfaces. The tricky part is when you do that, you break your routing. When you do that, you break your routing. Because we initially set up the OSPF domain for this network, not this network. So I have to go into OSPF and change the network statements from essentially this subnet mask to that subnet mask, but you have to, they're in wildcard bits, they're inverted, so I go from 0.0.0.127 to 0.0.0.7 on the network command. So here's what that looks like. On R1, this used to read network 201.68.109.128 0.0.0.127 area 0. Now it reads 0.0.0.7. This used to read up here IP address 201.68.109.129, 255.255.255.128. And now it reads .248. So I changed the subnet mask. I changed the wildcard mask in the routing process. I did that on all three routers. On R1, on R2, and on R3. .248 and 0007. Any questions on number 4? What?
It says have a message digest in there too.
You have a message digest error? That's your authentication.
Not an error. It just says error is your authentication message digest. That's with like the, it's like right above 9.0.0.0 in that.
Yeah?
Is that bad? Or?
No, that's what. Yeah, that's number 10. We haven't gotten to number 10 yet.
I wasn't on it. It's like, where is it?
Haven't gotten to that yet.
Okay.
Okay. Number 5, create NAT. And I didn't go over this previously. It's one of the reasons I'm doing this tonight. I think I skipped over network address translation. Yeah. You can create NAT, and this is one of those questions where it's relating to these devices here. You can do NAT in a couple of different places. You could do it on R1 as traffic is coming in to the network, or you could do it on R2. All right? Both would be right. Either would be right. Don't do it on both, but either would be right. Okay? So, I think I did it on did I do it on R1?
It's easier to do everything in R1.
Yeah, I did it on R1 myself. So I had one for each of those statements, and the command is IP NAT source static local IP address or private IP address, global IP address or public IP address.
You just flip them, right? I mean, what do you have?
What do you mean flip them?
I mean, like, what you have listed on the word thing, you just flip them.
Yeah. Pretty much. Questions on number 5?
Can you show us something about workstation in VMware?
What do you mean?
How did you edit the IP addresses?
That's not related to number 5. I will show you, absolutely. I'll show you, Sam, but let me, all right, well, that's fine. On VM workstation, what's your question? I'm sorry.
Was there the section where you edit the VM IP addresses somewhere?
Yeah. In order for you to do testing, you have to do a couple different things. One, for your VMnet, this guy is related to he's number .4, 192.168.50.4. Okay? So, in order for me to get this into the GNS3 domain environment, I have to have my cloud, my cloud set up on the correct VMnet. For me, I have it set up for VMnet 2.
Just another network.
Hold on. VMnet 2 is what I had the cloud setting on. For that to work on the VM,
When you say cloud, you mean the server, right?
the server, yes. On the VM, if I go to settings, on the network adapter, I have to have it set on VMnet 2 as well. Okay? That's really important. If you don't have that working, you're hosed. Alright?
But the VM not to get networks.
As long as it matches networks. VMnet 2 works because under the virtual network adapter, so if you go to edit virtual network adapter, or virtual network editor, excuse me, it's getting late. VMnet 2 is host only on that 192.168.50 network. If this is some other network, everything's going to break.
Make sure both things.
Make sure they're set. Make sure that your VMnet 2 in your editor matches your IP address on your VM, matches your IP address in your VM, matches your connector on your server in GNS3. All have to match up. If any of them do not, it will break.
What were your settings on the virtual network editor for DHCP?
I didn't even care to look. It's not important. Not important.
Yeah, well, if it's enabled, that's fine. The server would get one from that DHCP pool, but since I'm putting a static IP on the VM, it doesn't matter.
You have to turn the firewall off too to make sure that things can connect to the network.
Yeah, I'll cover that in a second. Okay.
So, look at this. If I go to Network and Sharing Center, and I go to the adapters, if I look at the properties of my adapter, okay, now I need to change mine to .4.
My default gateway is .2. I've changed the IP address of the Ethernet interface on the router on R2 to .2 from .1. Okay? That is because my virtual network adapter in VMware Workstation is .1. It defaults to .1. Alright? To the gentleman's point, I have to go into Administrative Tools. Come on. Under Windows Firewall, come on. And if I right click on Windows Firewall Policies and go into Properties, and turn everything off.
Can you show me how you got there?
Do you recommend that in a production environment?
Hell no. What I would do in a production environment is I would add the rules, new rule, okay, a port rule, and what does Radius use, UDP or TCP? UDP, good answer. And then what is it used for authentication? What? 1812. And if you're not sure, guess what you can do? You can go into one of the routers, if you set it up already, it will tell you under your Radius server command. Actually, it's 1645. 1812 is the old style radius ports. They're deprecated now. So 1645 and 1646. Add that rule. Allow the connection. Block the connection. Profile, I want it under all of them. Give a name. Radius. And finish. Now I can turn my firewall back on. Alright. Now, going back to R2, I can ping myself, I can ping my server, I still can't ping, and I can ping my EMNet. Good. So I am all set, ready to rock and roll. Did that answer your question, Sam?
Yes, sir.
Excellent.
So I believe those three IP
I'm gonna get to that. I'm gonna get to that. You're jumping ahead. It's okay. All right. Question number 6, right? Create and overload a PAT address tied to your R1 serial interface, which in this case is going to be 201.68.109.98. And allow the workstation subnet to use it. All right, so on R1, I just realized something. I just broke something in order for this to work. Since I had you do this, I'll come back to this. Think about what we did, though, a couple steps ago. Okay? Think about what we did with the RFC 1918.
I have a question. When you say serial interface, do you actually mean like...
The outside interface.
Okay. And then...
That was a little confusing. I see. I was talking more along the lines of the diagram, because this is the symbol for a serial interface. But it can be a... This is a fast Ethernet interface as well.
And then the other question, if you block, like when you can go scroll back down to that question. Oh, that's not the one.
I'm going to get to this. I'm going to get to this. Trust me. Okay?
Yep.
It's a little tricky. So on R1, let's set up the PAT first. The command is IPNAT source list. I have to create a list for the inspection rule. I named PAT. A name interface. Interface fast Ethernet 00 overload. So what this statement essentially says is I want to allow devices that are matching from access list path to be translated to the IP address on interface fast Ethernet 00, and I'm allowing it to be overloaded. More than one connection. Okay? My source list is here. I'm going to permit 172.21.0.0, 0.0.0.255. Okay? Now here's the tricky part. I already did something right here. See who caught that. Where did I apply access list RFC 1918? Where did I apply it?
On,
So you applied it on.
I applied it right here, didn't I?
Yeah, R1.
So, think about this. It's the order of operations of what happens in a router comes into play. I have traffic coming in, it's hitting my receive buffer, inbound, on this interface, where I have that access group. It hits that access list first. If I have workstations here that are trying to get out to the internet, they hit that access list. Before they even get to the NAT or PAT process, their traffic is dropped. I still want to block RFC 1918 access. So, what do I have to do? What? No. Very simple. No, you can't change the order. Bingo. You can't change the order of operations.
No, that's a new, you change the actual, insert things in the middle of the newer version.
You can. Okay. So I could put a permit there. I could. That would work for that specific network. That would work. But there's another way you could do it. So if you did that, and I saw you had that permit there, and you had the pack correct, you got pool correct. Very ingenious way to do it. This is where what he said is absolutely right. That creates more process. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So what is going to happen instead is what he said. You move that access group from the inside interface to the outside interface outbound. It will work just as well. Okay, so what Kerry said is true. You can take oops, wrong router, sorry. You can take this access list right here, and since it's a named access list, I can make another entry and do a permit of 172.16.0.0 0.0.0.255 and make sure that it is above the denies, so it'll pass. And then the other private addresses would be denied. It'll go through, it'll hit the NAT process, we're done. Or I can just simply take the access group off of Fast Ethernet 1 and go to interface F00 and change it to outbound. Does the same damn
What was
thing.
the first one you did? You put the one above deny. Which one did you put above deny?
I didn't do that in this case. I said you could.
Okay, well, which one was it?
This here.
Okay.
I can go into this access list. Do a permit permit, it's standard 172.16.0.0.0.0.0.255. You shall run. That puts it down at the bottom though, which is what I don't want. So,
Yeah, very much to remove the whole thing, start over, in order.
this is where scripting comes into play. Carrie's right, in iOS 15 it's a little bit easier. want to get really fancy.
One question, do you have that permanent 172 in there? Wouldn't it all just skip over that deny the 172?
Nope, it goes in order. It goes in order.
Right, so hit the permit, and it permit everything back to submit.
Yep.
And so when it just, it would, if say it was in that submit.
If it hits that permit, it doesn't go through the rest of the list.
Right, so as I'm saying, is it just, what's the point of leaving the deny in there? Does it hit
Deny anything else.
Okay.
What happens if somebody starts, you know, spoofing an address on the network or something of that sort? Right? Copy. Paste. Done. There. Now, much better. I can do that. I can move that access group back to the inside interface.
Does Cisco have anything like Microsoft world where they have the effective permissions where you basically just look at everything combined? Let's say, what is...
No, because what Microsoft is doing in that case is more holistic inspection, where this is just standard.
You have to be smarter with this.
Yeah, yeah.
Or at least document.
Right. This is just standard stateful inspection. That's stateful inspection. All right. Next. Seven, set up DHCP pool. All right. I should not have to tell you how to do that. I think you guys can do this DHCP pool. You've done it before. Number 8. Number 8's where it gets tricky. Number 8's where it gets tricky. And everybody's had problems with number 8. Okay, so here's what we do. On your Radius server. Yeah, sorry. The first thing you want to do is create a role. So under Server Manager and under Roles, you want to find where it says Add a Role. Sorry. Add Roles. Click there. Click Next. You click on Network Policy and Access Services. You click Next. There's 4 more check boxes for routing and NPS and a couple other things. You check all 4 of those boxes. You click Next. It installs. When you're done installing, under Roles, you will get this Network Policy and Access Services. At first, you will only see the routing and remote access. For whatever reason, in Microsoft's infinite wisdom, it's best to reboot the server when you add a role. That way you'll get everything. So you'll reboot the server. That role will show up. That one says NPS. Okay? Then, under the first one, Radius Clients and Servers, you go to Radius Clients, you right click, you click New Radius Client, and here's where you add your routers. R1, the IP address of R1, your shared secret, which is Cisco, on both of these. Now, one key piece of information here. One key piece of information. I'm going to go into R2, for example. Properties. All right? All right. Address is 192.168.50.2. I do a show run, where are you at? IP radius, source interface, fast Ethernet 01. That's got to match that. It's one and the same. It's one and the same. It's just fine. It's got to match. All right. Your shared secret is the same as your radius-server key Cisco. Your radius-server host, which is wrong in this case because I just changed it. I got to change it back. Got to be that IP address of the server, which in this case is .4. What?
No, I saw 128 was really wrong.
Yeah, 128 is wrong. I had that from a previous lab. Yes.
All routers, so.
Yes.
So
That's
for the
best
radius-
practice.
Okay, so for the radius server, it's type 7, because you can't do anything else.
That's fine.
It's fine.
It's better than clear text. All right. You need to do the same thing on R3. And R1. All right. This here, let me get to it. This right here is what I need a screenshot of for number 8, or for later on. I need a screenshot of this window right here, so I see R1, R2, and R3.
So it's just those 3 addresses?
Yep, that's it.
Does it matter what their friendly name is?
No. Oh yeah, the friendly name's got to be R1, R2, R3.
I wasn't sure.
Would the address be the other interface's address? Like, does it have to be the, like, do they all be?
Here's one of those things where there's a couple right answers.
Okay.
This IP address matches up with the interface here on the inside.
I see. But if you did it the other way around, it'd be okay.
Yes, it would work just fine.
Yeah, because I had it all working, it's just that I was using the.
That's fine.
So as long as the IP matches the interface.
That's fine. Yeah, you get points. Okay. That covers number 8. Number 9. Number 9, I'm going to go over briefly because you guys got to have something to work on. All right? With the ACLs, you can have multiple ACLs depending on where you're going to apply them, what you're going to do with them, and everything else. Okay? You're going to have at least 2. At least 2. Maybe more. And it's okay if you have more. Okay? SMTP from the internet to 192.168.50.25. Now, I have to write that so that it's the public IP, not the private IP, and I would put that on R1. Because ACLs get hit first before translations. Same thing with B. Same thing with B.
What are the ports again? BlackBerry, I only have 3101.
3101. I believe 82. I think it might be 8208 or yeah. Don't quote me on that one. Huh? You can Google BlackBerry allowed ports, and you can also look up BlackBerry Bez server, enterprise server configuration guide.
Does that have to be on all, or can you have it
No, it's all going to be on the same Acls. Is that your question?
I mean, for some reason I put it on R3, can I just put on R1 too?
On R3.
I don't know how it applies.
Why would you put? Which one did you put on?
I don't know how, maybe I wasn't paying attention when I was doing it. But I have like permit.
That sounds like it's the case.
443. I put them all on.
That sounds like it's the case.
But do I have to remove them from R3? Or?
Yeah, well, it depends on what you have applied and where. C is pretty straightforward. Again, I did this specifically to trip you up. You need to make sure that it's not, you're not talking about a translation somewhere, because your access list may be the public IP, not the private IP. Someone will lose points on that, I guarantee you. Allow hosts on the workstation network to access Active Directory, but block them from accessing the ACS server. So this is a separate ACL. Block hosts from accessing this server via SSH. Okay?
Is that blocked in Telenet? Is that VTY?
No, block via SSH. Block hosts from accessing that host via SSH.
VTY?
You're overthinking it, Sam. Block all hosts from being accessed via Telnet. So that would fall under, this would fall under that. What, that answers your question. Okay? In OSPF, Area 0, incorporate area authentication. We did this before. I just don't know if I still have it set up or not. Does not look like I do. Yeah. So, to set up area authentication, two things. Router OSPF 100. Area 0 authentication. Message digest. Enter. And then on that interface, IP OSPF authentication. Message digest.
This is the MD5 key.
Yeah.
Is it OSPF message digest? 1.
Message digest key.
Yeah, I mean 1 MD5.
1 MD5
Cisco.
Cisco.
That's on every router.
It's on every router. take that out.
So instead of doing that, I should take it. We can't put UPS.
So we go to R2.
I was tripping out.
Area 0.
The Cisco webpage thing. Where you log in.
Really?
Authentication.
You want to do that?
Message digest.
Yeah. I've been doing that too. I'm like, sleep.
And then it is IP OSPF.
Earlier today, I have that CPU gauge on it and maxed out. Yeah, I like desktop. That's what I'm like.
There we go.
Set that up.
And it'll load up. And then you do that on R3. Hmm? Oh, area 0. That's right. Area 0. IP OSPF message digest. Sorry?
Like when you're typing in areas zero, is that like you're labeling that command, or is it like?
I'm not labeling the command, I'm telling it where authentication is going to take place, which is in area 0. There. It's all back up and working now. And that's it, guys. Take a screenshot of that. Give me all your configs. Email it to me, print it out, give it to me on Wednesday. You're done.
You want it like a zip or?
No, do not zip it.
Okay.
Please do not zip it.
So,
It's a text file, right? Not the actual.
well, the picture though. Useful.
Picture is not that big. Questions? Yes?
Is there a reason why you have R3 set to 7291?
Yeah, because it is. This IP address right here. I could have set it for this one. If everything matched up, guess what? You've still been right. 6 to 1 hand, half dozen the other. Yes, Sam?
So 3 config files and a picture.
Yep. 3 config files and a picture. Questions?
I gosh.
Yep.
If we have everything.
Earlier in your access list for RFC 1918,
Yep.
I think the wildcard for your yeah, that looked funny to me.
0.0.31.255?
No, the 10.0.
That's separate.
Right.
The wild card for the 7.
Well, that's for 7.
Here, hey, look here.
The back one for
The wild card.
/29.
Right.
Here?
In your config. On R1, for that access.
That note that you have on the board.
Right there, did I go back to it?
It's late. I may have made a mistake.
Right there. Up, right there.
This?
No, a little bit more up.
This?
Up a little more.
I think it's that one.
Yeah.
It's that, right there.
Class A.
That one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Should it be 0.255? Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah, that's a Class C, not a Class A. So it should be 0.255.255.255. Good catch.
And then was this one 32.255 or is that one?